Welcome to Subconscious. I am your co-host, Reverend April Kling Meyer, and with me, as always, is co-host Timothy Freeman, hypnotist. And we are here today to talk about innocence and villainy. I had always said villainy, which I guess is a word, but my autocorrect kept changing it to villainy, and I looked it up. It's actually supposed to be villainy, so villainy
It's
it
kind
is.
of sounds like really cool and old school, like at least Elizabethan or something. Villainy.
What, villainy or villainry?
Villainy.
Villainy. Let's dive right in, shall we? So first, I actually did a two-parter this week. The topic wasn't quite as lively as some of our other topics, but I think it's still just as juicy. And so the first question I asked this week on Facebook.
Well, let's set our intentions really quickly before we
I
dive
almost
in.
forgot. Yeah, let's do that.
I know.
Let's do that.
Okay, great.
Let's take it back.
Subconscious
Take
Sundays.
it back a step.
Yeah. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. We want this to be a fun and entertaining, laid-back way to discuss potentially serious and heavy topics on Subconscious Sundays.
While we remain open and inviting, welcoming to those who have questions, to respectfully bring those to the conversation.
Yes, and this has become a really awesome weekly ritual for us and those of you who join us live. I hope so too, where we're able to gather our shared community in virtual sacred space, sharing our knowledge and direct experience in some cases while hearing your response.
And we always want to mention our core values here on Subconscious Sundays, which is to be respectful of everyone's individual journey, stay rooted in compassion for ourselves and others, while creating a supportive community. Thank you for being here with us today. And like I said, so eager to dive right in. Next week is on perfectionism. So this week, I find myself, okay, I've already gotten ahead of myself. Wow, talk about perfectionism. What is the function of innocence? Once lost, can innocence be reclaimed? Jill says, I find myself having difficulty separating innocence and ignorance in my thoughts about the question. So what I wanted to do then is I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of the two different forms of innocence. So defining what we're going to be talking about today. There's two kind of different meanings of the word innocence. And this is something that I really went into depth exploring a few years ago. And today I'll be sharing something I wrote about that. But innocence to me in two different families. It's innocence in terms of ignorance. Once when you don't know something, even Adam before they ate the fruit from the tree of knowledge and life, right? And then there's the innocence of being not guilty. So it's like not knowing innocence and not guilty innocence. So there's two kind of different families of meaning for that word. And we'll be talking a little bit about both today. And Aaron asks, does it even have a function? So the question was, what is the function of innocence? And yes, Aaron, it does. Especially when we're talking about it in the framework of villainy. Innocence's function is to be the desired object of the villain. It is to take innocence or to ruin innocence, or to, in the case of the villain, to not be innocent anymore. So when we think of the definition of villainy, innocence kind of provides an object of like loss, lack. There's the loss and the lack of innocence of the victim as well as the villain here. So innocence provides this sort of desired object, or this object of loss or lack, right? And Augie goes and says, innocence is virtuous ignorance. So there's one family. He's covering kind of one family of innocence. Virtuous and ignorance. I think the function of innocence is to keep most of society ignorant and virtuous for as long as it may benefit an established order. So Augie's speaking of innocence from a political standpoint. And I think he's got a really excellent point. So then we parents, he's a really wise person. And I had to edit hers down quite a bit. It was really, really juicy. Go to my Facebook page, personal Facebook page, to see what she had to say in more depth. But I condensed it down. If we see innocence as a way of being, a birthright, a protective art field, then surely, despite what happens on our pathways in life, we remain whole, complete, perfect in who and what we are, and retain that innocence of spirit. So I wanted to kind of answer that question first, kind of lay the baseline before we talk about villainy. We've already brought villainy up. Now, I also want to mention that Karen, I happen to know, is a student of A Course in Miracles. I realize this is going to appear backwards on all of your screens, but this is kind of the tome. Um, I really feel like this is an exploration of innocence in a nutshell. It's the idea that all that we are is innocent. Everything that we do and everything that we is not necessarily, but everything that we are is pure and whole and innocent. And that everything else is just like an illusion or the Toltec dream, as it is referred to before the Miguel release works, the Reese family works. So if we can think of that framework a little bit to kind of move with the tone here as far as how I'm going to be approaching it today. So then I say also, what are the qualities of a villain's made? And Aaron says, no set formula. I'd say, um, okay, he's right, but there's also quite a bit of formula in the making of here in the other comments as well. Jill says, in entertainment, books, movies, games, etc., they have to be relatable, or the audience just hates them and doesn't want to hear about them. People want to understand their reason they are bad, right? So that is sort of like kind of when we talk about the layers of villainy and how we approach it. We've got this layer of villainy that's like this judgment layer, like, oh, they're bad. What they're, like they're bad. They're bad people. They're villains, right? And we get this other layer that's really popular in entertainment, like Bill said. We've got this, what they're doing is like bad, and their actions are their layer that Bill also mentioned, which is like they are people doing bad things because reasons, like they were all that. Actually, the next comment talks about that, so let me just bring that up. Villains are known for their dastardly deeds, which can inflict harm on others. Whereas villainous could be in the eye of the beholder to some extent. And my mom, that's my mom, Claudia. As far as what makes one, might vary from its combination of inherent mental abuse or neglect. Like that's what Jill's referring to. Like we have to understand why they are the way they are, why they're doing the thing, right? And I also have kind of like this. Dr. Jessica Taylor is like a big deal. Like she's not going in and commenting on my Facebook questions for Subconscious Sundays, but she did post this, and I then shared it and said, "Hey, I hope this kind of jogs some response because that's what we're talking about." And she said, "People who ignore widespread systemic harm or oppression because they are all right, or it never happened to them, really." Really kind of felt like I hope she had commented that underneath, because then and she said privilege, right? So this idea that villainy can come from privilege, and there's a lot of fascination with privilege in the media right now. We're all kind of diving deep into what I'm going to start naming on this show and start talking a lot about it, wound. right? Like this idea that we have to dive deep into why we are the way we are as villains, people with privilege, right? So we do need to get to the bottom of that, and there's really good reasons why. Definitely never going to catch me ever saying that we shouldn't be going into the why when it comes to villainy. But I also am going to point out that this is Subconscious Sundays, and we're going to be talking a lot about where the villain fits into this drama triangle. And it is so important to see the villain as one of the members of this triangle and one of the interchangeable members of this triangle. Now, to go back to previous episodes, we've now talked about the hero, we've now talked about the victim. Now, today, we're going to talk about the villain. So those are the three members of that triangle. And at any given point, you can be in identification with one of those three. And if you are in that framework where you are truly and completely in dynamic with the ego, you can be casting yourself in that role. Now, while you are in that egoic framework, while you were casting, which is another episode we've done, roles and masks, right? Kind of getting to that point in the season where everything's kind of coming together. Full circle time. It means you've cast someone else as a hero, and it means you cast someone else as the victim if you're casting yourself as the villain, so to speak. If you're casting yourself as the hero, you've also casted somebody as the victim and somebody as the villain. Sometimes it's the same people, right? Like I'm saving this person from themselves, right? Is a good example of I'm the hero, they're also the victim and the villain. Like you're in an abusive dynamic, right? Like you're in trauma bond with somebody. You can also be in the victim dynamic and believe yourself to be believe the be the hero and you be the victim, and then you just to save yourself right from that person. Or but there's a lot of different ways that this could go, and I could go all day about that. But whenever we are casting ourselves as one of those three things, we're casting something or someone else as one of the other two things or both the other two things. And that is a strong signifier that we are in identification with the ego and not the true inner divine favorite self, right? We're not in our trueness of being. Hesitate to even say that because it sounds like I'm entering into this other dynamic, which means we have to judge ourselves or other people for being in that dynamic, when I am here to tell you that there is no need to judge ourselves. It is a question, and it is a constant in our lives to be in the drama triangle dynamic. We just have to watch it. We have to be the conscious watcher of it. And we have to know that's our signal to step back from it. We have to enter into that dynamic of being in our higher, better, truer, divine inner selves, and try to be in that where we see the innocence of the. Now that is really hard work, not easy. It becomes the work that is necessary to do for our well-being. We have to start looking at ourselves and when we've been the villain sometimes, and we have to go into that dynamic in order to exercise forgiveness and atonement. Another episode that we've done. So, as you can see, not only is it unnecessary to judge oneself for going into that dynamic, there is a very, very potent spiritual use case for recognizing that dynamic, because it is forgiveness and atonement that allows us that spiritual freedom to be our identified with that truer, inner, better, favorite divine self, right? So if we're able to see that dynamic for what it is, if we're the villain, we must atone. If someone else is the villain, we must forgive. As we know from that episode in Forgiveness and Atonement, that's not easy. It's not easy work. It's juicy work. It's very life giving and very fruitful work, but it's work and it's hard work. It can be very difficult work. So, the exercise that I will give as homework for this topic is when you're on social media or you're watching TV, you see somebody in the news that you identify as the villain. This could be a political figure, this could be a billionaire, this could be somebody that you believe to be evil, truly, truly evil in the truest sense. Let that now be your signal to go, I'm in dynamic. Am I casting myself as the hero or am I casting myself as the victim of that person I've identified as the villain? Am I identifying as hero? Am I identifying as victim? And if so, how am I going, if I'm in the victim dynamic, if I'm the victim and that person on TV is, or in the news or on my social media feed is the villain, if I'm the victim, how can I empower myself? Right? And if I'm playing hero dynamic, like I'm an armchair activist, this bitch, if I'm in hero dynamic, stop, pull back. Is what I'm doing actually helpful? Am I really being empowered, or is this like the veneer of empowerment by taking on this heroic dynamic with this villain? So you see, each of those is an interesting moment to evaluate. Again, another previous episode, balance and control. Do I have control in this dynamic? Probably not. If you're in dynamic with the villain, you're probably allowing them to have too much power. Bringing that control, that power back to yourself is to get out of that dynamic and empower yourself to do what you need to do to reclaim whatever energy you believe that villain to be taking from you. And as a hero, it allows you to redirect that energy that you would be spending in that dynamic to take on the more helpful things, the things that you can control, as opposed to the things that you can't. So that's my stuff. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, really awesome. I mean, as we've been talking about this, I mean, it really does tie up a lot of what we talked about before. And couple of things that what you're saying makes me think of that we've talked about before on the episode. Um, First of all, I think a lot of times, identifying the emotion too can be helpful here. If you are recognizing that you're in this drama triangle dynamic and you're at one point here, what is the emotion you're feeling? I think often it's fear or anger, right?
Yeah.
Um, so, with fear, so the thought is something along the lines of something bad might happen. And even just that objectivity where you can recognize, first of all, that you're in this triangle, you can maybe name the feeling that you're feeling and get a little bit more objectivity there, right? And then if it's fear, something bad might happen. Is that based in reality? Like, and how big is the risk? Can you prepare or avoid it? Right. And then if it's anger, well, the satisfying responses for that would be, if it's actionable, if you can make it fair. I think that's why anger exists, right? Like, it's to motivate us to help
Make it fair.
get that, yeah, make it fair. But if you can't, if we're talking about like social media and politics or something like that, and there's some big villain, or if something you can't, it's not actionable, then really the only satisfying response for you to get inner peace around the whole thing is to kind of take back your balance and control and forgive. um, and it's all about you taking about your control, instead of having your control being lost in this dynamic, right?
The ultimate
So
goal
anyway,
being seeing yourself and others, all others, as pure, whole, and innocent.
Good call. And I really like how this came in here too, because the eternal part of ourselves. Everybody's got different beliefs on this, but I think if you're on Subconscious Sundays tuning into Reverend April Kling Meyer, you probably recognize that there is a eternal part of us. That's as I love how April put it, our higher favorite. There was like several adjectives there. We all know it. That kind of covers it all. But
everybody has their own like favorite adjective to put in front of self, and some have gone in and out of fashion, so I try to include them all.
yeah, well, and we've all heard, or maybe we've all heard, hurt people, right?
Yeah.
So that goes
Can't
to
finish an episode on
this.
villainy without bringing that up. Totally.
Yeah, right. But at the same time, we do want to qualify this a little bit. Sometimes it's really clear cut. Sometimes there's like a perpetrator, and in the original model here, this drama triangle, like villain is perpetrator, right? Sometimes there's an actual perpetrator. They actually did something, and there's an actual victim, and this is all real stuff. Sometimes we're constructing this in our minds.
Right. That's important to say in these conversations.
Yes.
Because yes, people hurt people. If we want to go into that, what Jill mentioned before about like the why, right? But I think that we spend about, when it comes to, well, first of all, we also did cover that quite a bit in our episode on victimhood, which is that idea that like being a victim of something, just to sum that up real quick, being a victim of something is a real thing that can happen to you. And yes, you can be a victim, but victimhood is the prolonging of that dynamic. So there's that. And I did want to read something I mentioned earlier on innocence that I wrote. It'll take 1 minute to do that. And then I'm going to hand it over to you for our beautiful encounter with the subconscious today. So this is something I wrote a while ago. I was raised to believe, not by my parents necessarily, but by other influences who mattered a great deal to me growing up, that innocence was a worthless trait to have and to keep. Innocence, I believe, for a long time was something I needed to rid myself of quickly, like a foul smell that told everyone around me I was stupid and unworthy of attention. Innocence was stolen from me in increments and scraped off of me in sheaths by my own hand. I don't pine for it. I don't long to have it all back, but I wish I had let innocence linger much longer. Today, as I encounter innocence, I protect it and I do my best to convey its purpose and its extreme worth to its holder. I don't let anyone in my midst squander it on nearly anything. Perhaps that makes me a preserver or perpetuator of naivety, but perhaps it makes me a fierce protector of peace. So my spiritual work always is about getting back to that divine innocence, reclaiming that as my own personal power. And to me, if I'm in villain dynamic, I'm moving further away from that.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, April. That's really pretty good way to tie up everything that you shared, I think.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Let's do some hypnosis.
Okay, great. We'll do a short hypnotic meditation today. And if you would like to join me for this hypnotic meditation, go ahead and just find a comfortable position where you can relax peacefully and undisturbed for a few minutes. And as you're settling in, I want to say a few words about the stamp of villain or persecutor. As April mentioned, we've all had the experience in life where we identify someone or something as the villain or persecutor, someone else, something else in our lives, or even ourselves. And sometimes it's within the context of our personal life, sometimes broader, politics, a natural disaster, something like that. Sometimes the assignment of villain is entirely truthful and clear cut. Sometimes it's self-generated protective mechanism. And that might be based on an erroneous perception or an incomplete assessment. And we're talking about a formation of a belief that can either be very empowering and solution oriented if it can help us correct the issue or restore a sense of fairness or justice here, or disempowering, self-defeating, erroneous, where we're just identifying with the ego and it goes nowhere except around and around in our own minds, scapegoating, where we can easily displace blame onto a representative for the cause of our suffering. So it's important to realize that this is entirely natural. Our conscious mind evolved to be a natural problem solver. It's what's helped humanity and you survive. So, in an automatic attempt to solve the problem we see caused by an external influence, our awareness can easily become narrowed in on the unfairness or pain or outrage or fear that we feel. And we have a cognitive need to identify who or what is responsible. So this is how the mind tends to work. So just be gentle with yourself when you are recognizing that you're identifying yourself as a victim or identifying someone else as a villain. Um, our emotions are our reaction to these kinds of thoughts that we have, trying to assess who or what is responsible. And it can be really helpful to realize that these emotions get stirred up to provide the energy needed to satisfy an unmet need, want, or desire. Sometimes this is actionable, sometimes it's not actionable. But if we can just take a step back, we can take responsibility for our own well being. We can root ourselves or ground ourselves safely in our own locus of control, where we can actually make a difference for ourselves. We can surrender with curiosity and an open heart to what is presented to us in our experiences and the lessons we need to learn from them. So, as you're settled in to a safe and comfortable position, we're going to revisit and just practice a technique that we introduced before that will help you anytime that you recognize that you're trapped in the drama triangle. So you can easily and almost effortlessly take this responsibility for your own internal state, step out of the drama triangle by reestablishing a connection with that deeper and wiser part of you. So allow yourself to just relax, take in a deep breath. And as you exhale, release any tension in your body. And with each breath, you sink deeper into a state of calm and tranquility. And if you haven't already, go ahead and close your eyes. I'd like you to take your attention to the surface beneath you. Sense of gravity holding you to the earth. And as you focus on this sensation of gravity, you feel more settled, more comfortably relaxed into the earth, supported by life itself. And as you take in a deep breath, focus on the feeling of gravity supporting you. It helps you to send your awareness down, down, deeper and deeper into the earth, down, grounded and supported to the very center of the earth. And as that awareness fades, you go even more deeply, even more comfortably relaxed. You're in harmony with the pulse of the planet. And you now send this newer, deeper sense of relaxation from the top of your head to the very tips of your toes. 1, 2, 3. And as you take in another deep breath, allow your awareness to reach upward into the universe, up, 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 as far into the heavenly realm of inspiration as an insight as you'd like to go, to this very center of the universe now, and call in your higher power, whatever that is to you. Know that an all-encompassing love fills you and your environment. As you bring your awareness back down, down into your body, let that grounded, nurturing energy of the earth and the wisdom and clarity of the divine commingle in this balance point of your heart. And you feel now even more grounded, settled, calm, and open inspiration. Now drop your consciousness into your heart, and you start to feel a deep familiar sense of warmth and comfort. Imagine a warm golden light surrounding your body, and as you do, it starts to fill you with an even deeper sense of peace and tranquility, almost weightless, very spacious. And as you focus on this sense of spaciousness around you, it's almost as if you can't tell where your body ends and the rest of the world begins. Feel this warm golden light washing away any last tension or stress in your body, leaving you in a state of deep relaxation and stillness. And start to slow your rate of breathing even further. Comfortable, slow, relaxed breaths with a really long exhalation. And you notice just how still your body and your mind can become, even after just a minute. And you get just still enough to start to feel the flow of life all around you. Warm, luminous, like the light of the full moon, the flow of life all around you. Now drop back into that flow now and just let go into this flow of life. Feel it. I'm going to give you a moment of silence just to notice what this flow of life feels like. Drop back into it. Just surrender into it. Probably feels really good to your body and your mind to have this perception of this flow of life, almost weightless, as you've surrendered into this flow. And in a moment, I'm going to count back from 3 to 1. And we're going to emerge from this hypnotic meditation, deeply recognizing this feeling, what it actually feels like to sort of surrender to that higher part of yourself. Just the mechanism of surrendering to that higher part of yourself. 3, feeling that flow of life all around you, luminous, like the light of the full moon. 2, as you focus on that sensation, it sinks even deeper into your being. That flow of life becomes part of you. And you recognize that this state right now, this still point, you have fuller access to a more resourceful part of you, a wiser part of you, a part of you that can respond thoughtfully and compassionately to yourself and to others when you recognize that you're trapped in the drama triangle. And 1, start to wiggle your toes, wiggle your fingers, and when you're ready, open your eyes right back here on Subconscious Sundays.
Beautiful.
And thank you for joining us. Yeah, I wanted to keep this really short and sweet. We did this before on one of the episodes about the hero, and I've been using this technique for myself, and I find it really helpful. And the more you practice, the better you get at these techniques. Our minds are so powerful. Just with the breath, just with taking a moment. Once you've recognized, we want to grab that insight, and now you know what to do. You can just take a few deep breaths, relax into yourself, fall back into that flow of life all around you, and you'll recognize that sensation when you're there.
Yeah. Your meditation reminded me of some advice I once gave. And you know me, I don't like giving advice. It's not something I do. or even like doing. And it's something that's kind of frowned upon in the dynamic of being an interfaith minister or spiritual guide of some sort. But I gave this advice to somebody who was in a dynamic with God, in that sense of, why is God doing this to me? Why is this happening to me? Why is the universe making this way?
Maybe
And I
starting to pin villain on God.
right, exactly. And I recognized in my own self times where I've even thought that way. Like, why is the universe like this? Why can't I have what I want? Why is God doing this to me? Why is God chose me for this, this trial, this suffering? And what I told this person to do, and now I do it too, because I like to take my own medicine, as Tim puts it, is that anytime I find myself in that dynamic with God, that I write a letter to God and use whatever word I prefer. I actually do prefer the word God. Some people prefer the word universe. I use that pretty interchangeably, or, higher power, higher, creator is my actual favorite. Write a letter to that being of your understanding, the God of your understanding, and then go back, take out the word God, scratch it out, and write my ego or ego in its place, and see if the letter is still true. It's a little exercise, a little thought exercise we could do, because
That's
a
awesome.
lot
I'm going to try
of,
it.
yeah, it's an eye opener. It's not like 100%, and it's never, but it is going to show you in those thoughts where your ego has you in dynamic. And it's also an empowering moment to see that we do a lot of this stuff to ourselves by prolonging our own suffering, by prolonging our own victimhood, and also prolonging the idea that we're somehow bad, and this in terms of villainy, like we're somehow bad, flawed, guilty. um I think atonement is probably harder for a lot of most people than forgiveness. So this is a signifier that you can enter the work of atonement. Now, that is a perfect segue to promoting the links below in the description to book time with either me or Tim, because a lot of the stuff that we're talking about when we say something is hard work, or we say something can is easier or harder to do, like this idea of seeing ourselves and everyone else as innocent, whole, and pure. That's hard work. When we talk about that, we also want to acknowledge how not alone you have to be in order to do that hard work. So here's where that comes in. You can book time with me to talk about it, and you can book time with Tim to work with him in the subconscious realm in hypnosis and do a lot of really great work, not alone. Because this kind of hard work is not meant to do alone. This is the kind of exercise, spirituality itself is supposed to be bringing us together to work together. And Tim and I exist for that purpose. We exist for that work to be done in community, in dynamic with one another in a spiritual realm. And you can book with me individually. My link is below. You can book with Tim individually. His link is below. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret. We've been kind of brainstorming ways that Tim and I can work with you, both of us. Maybe at the same time, maybe doing alternate meetings. And we're workshopping this now. So I'm going to just drop that little hint and let you know that that's something that is coming. We'll have something available where you can work with both of us very soon, because it's been
Yeah. If
asked
you're
for.
interested, yeah. And
Yeah.
thank you for those who asked about that. It's really sparked a lot of cool insight for us. But just book a time with either one of us if you're interested in kind of the whole enchilada here. We
Yeah,
can tell you more about it.
exactly. That's where it starts. And that the both of those links will take you to a place to book a free, no obligation consultation with either one of us and give us an idea of what it might be like to work with one of us and what would be like for us to work with you and see if it's a fit. No obligation, no cost, and certainly no expectations. But it is an opportunity for you to get to know us better as well. So go for it, I say. And next week will be our last episode of the season. This has been a very well bodied, well rounded season, and we have you to thank for that, especially those of you who offer commentary on and off the live. That has been so juicy, so delicious. Thank you. Keep it coming. We'll have news soon on when we will be coming back for our second season. But for now, join us next week for the perfectionism episode of Subconscious Sundays, and we'll see you then.